Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. There are a ton of new skates on the market and there are a ton of new pads on the market. I'm going to come out of the gate and let you guys know that my two favorite pads right now still are the Artisan Raiden Xsoft, and I do really enjoy the Pink Tang Dao, which is more of a balanced pad, kind of like the Artisan Zero, that provides a little bit more control when you need it. Really enjoy these two pads out of the entirety of my collection, and there's one prototype from Lethal that I think is probably going to take the cake moving into the future for what could be my GOAT pad. But overall, there are a lot of new pads that are quite good that have hit the market, so I want to cover those, and I want to cover a lot of the new skates. Let's get into it. The pad I want to start with is the Raven Mousepad's Mori, and this is the pad that we're going to do our skate testing on and go over my favorite new skates as well. The Raven Mousepad's Mori is advertised as having a custom pour-on. You can kind of see that nice base there. It stays nice and stuck on your desk. This is 4 millimeters thick, and that thickness is kind of making the pad more along the lines of an Artisan Soft compared to an Artisan Xsoft. It does feel nice. You can dig in with quite a bit of pressure to get an additional amount of stopping power, and the surface itself is rather controlled in and of itself. It feels like a Spire Kamek in the sense that it is a little bit textured and more textured than a Saturn Pro, more textured, in my opinion, than a Lethal Saturn or something like the new Tang Dao from ESPTiger. I think it's a very good pad if anybody is looking for something a little bit more controlled than the Lethal Saturn. If you want that speed to come down a hair, this pad definitely accomplishes that. And I think the build quality overall, particularly for their first pad, is extremely high. They've definitely set a good bar for themselves. The stitching looks absolutely beautiful. The color is great. No issues with the logo on the bottom right. Obviously, the logo does have an effect on the overall speed. But because the pad is 490 by 420, I don't think you're going to be reaching that area of the pad. So they've done an extremely good job. And again, this is going to be the pad that you're looking for if you want just a hair lower in speed than a Lethal Saturn. I'm going to do my skate testing on this pad in particular and just go over my favorite skates out of the new collection of skates that I have and what I like and what I don't like about a lot of these skates. Up first, I have the Superglide V2s. I think that this is an absolute tremendous improvement upon the original skates. These are a little bit matte. They're not glossy like the original skates, and they're not glossy like the ESPTiger glass skates. And because they are on the matte side and they feel a little bit more along the lines of the material used for their glass mouse pad, the glide feel is a lot different than the glossy skates. The glossy skates actually do have just overall a lower speed feel. The dynamic friction feels higher, static friction feels higher, even initial friction, which still is rather low, feels a little bit higher than the Superglide V2s. The Superglide V2s, you get this beautiful sense of openness in the sense that on any pad I put these on, of course I don't test these on hard pads, but any cloth pad I put this on, the speed is very similar. Initial friction's low, dynamic friction's low, static movements, low static friction. But the nice thing about these skates and the beautiful balance that they have is that the stopping power of the movements that you have is a complete stop. You don't have that end of range wiggle after a flick. I don't have any wiggle towards the end of that flick, and because of that, there's just a beautiful balance for tracking, a beautiful balance for flicks. So if you're using a wingman, a sniper, or shotguns in Apex, if you are trying to one-tap in Valorant, it's just a beautiful skate, and I think right now, definitely the most underrated and underspoken about skate on the market right now. My favorite, I've just ordered quite a number of pairs for my other mice. I'm really looking forward to putting more time into the Superglide V2s. I've had these skates on my G Pro Superlight now for 3 months. I've had absolutely no change, no noticeable wear on my cloth pads that I've used it on, no noticeable wear on the skates themselves. Literally, I don't see any scratches at all on the skates. So I think the durability and the performance on these far outshines the durability and performance of their V1s. Again, the Tiger Esports glass skates for the G Pro Superlight, they're kind of reminiscent to the original Superglides from Pulsar. When you are going over different areas of your pad, it's almost like the skates are glued to certain areas. And I think that's just the way that moisture is, or humidity is affecting the skates. And the glossiness of the skates, there are just a little bit of micro tears and micro cuts in certain areas of the skates. So it's more along the lines of, in my opinion, the Superglide V1s. They're not as consistent as the Superglide V2s. And because of that alone, I'm just going to probably not recommend these since the Superglide V2s exist. The Superglide V2s are just that good. Again, the speed for dynamic and static is lower on these glossy skates. So if you do want to try these, keep in mind the speed will be lower than the Superglide V2s in all forms of movement, except maybe initial friction, which still is rather low. But overall, just the glide, the performance, the consistency, and that stopping power just seems better to me on the Superglide V2s. I have tried on my Zowie EC3 and several other mice. I have tried the new Sapphire Skates, the V2s. I actually like these. They are pretty damn good dots, but it's very pad dependent. So if you're using something with a lot of foam density, because these skates actually do have quite a bit of thickness still, there is just a little bit of an issue where you will kind of feel sometimes that extra slowness if a skate kind of digs into the pad too much. Overall, though, it really does work well on a wide array of cloth pads. I really liked this on my Tang Dao. I think they just open up the speed on dynamic friction. Static friction still feels rather balanced, but a tick towards speed. And then those initial friction type movements are actually cut down pretty drastically as well. So if you're somebody who likes dots and you want that experience of glass skates that have maybe a little lower speed than the Superglide V2s, these are actually pretty good, and I've noticed zero wear on the skates so far, so I think they're pretty damn durable. Again, the thickness is a little high still. I think if they are able to cut it down a little bit, they will have a really, really nice skate on their hands. Compared to the dots from ESPTiger, you can really see the difference in the thickness, and I think the dots, the new ESPTiger Ice V2s, just have a greater sense of balance without ever feeling that kind of digging into the pad. The skates, again, they're a little bit thinner than those dots from Sapphire Skates, and the speed of the Tiger Ice dots is kind of balanced. On dynamic movements, it feels fast and smooth. I never feel any tug or this great sense of slowness. They are rather open feeling and nice and balanced with leaning towards speed. I don't get this buttery sense or this buttery impression like I do on the Ghostglides. The Ghostglides are also a very thin dot, maybe even thinner slightly than the ESPTiger Ice V2s. But they are kind of this texture that is a lot more buttery than the Tiger Ice V2s. And because of that, for the full, if I was to have a full fitting set, so a skate to fit in the larger brackets here on the Atlantis, it's kind of a sense that you feel less of the pad, and I don't know if I really like that. I like still feeling a little bit of the pad itself, so I don't really go and find myself leaning towards the Ghostglides, but one thing I can say is that the overall integrity of the skate, the build quality, I've used these on glass, and I just don't really see a lot of that wear down like I did see on the BTL skates and some of the older PTFE skates. So I think the Ghostglides are durable. If you like feeling a little bit less of the material of your pad, they could be a good go-to for you. Just keep in mind they feel pretty damn buttery smooth. So if that's what you like, the Ghostglides are actually really, really good, and I have enjoyed them. The Tiger Ice V2 dots are what I think are probably my second favorite behind the Superglide V2s. They just feel exceptionally good and good build quality on glass. And I prefer the dots over the form-fitted skates. The form-fitted skates felt a little bit more controlled, and that extra control just kind of relates, especially on very slow movements, into almost like a gluey stickiness feeling. And because of that, I just don't really like the form-fitted skates. And I do recommend the Tiger Ice dots, which just keep this really nice balance in speed, have very good build quality, and you only really need 4 on a mouse to really get a nice sense of speed and control. It never feels wiggly. I get a little bit of that pad texture, and just overall a really nice, balanced, good build quality pair of skates. Now I'm going to talk about this pad very briefly. You guys have already seen this pad a number of times in a number of places, and particularly on my channel, I already have full reviews. This is the Saturn Pro, the new edition in soft. I think the soft thickness is my preference. You have just a little give into the pad, a little bit more, in my opinion, than something like the Mori. Overall, the new base here is exceptionally good. It's kind of got this diamond patterned pour-on base that just sticks to your desk exceptionally well. The build quality looks even better than it has in the past, with very nice rounded edges. The surface is over the stitching, and everything feels exceptionally good. So they continue to improve upon the Saturn Pro, and the soft version, again, I think is going to be my favorite. Faster than the Raven mousepads Mori by a pretty fairly significant amount to make both these pads quite different. But overall, the Saturn Pro is what I refer to as a balanced cloth pad, one where that you have very good stopping power and a great essence of control when you need it. Overall, an exceptionally good pad. If you guys want to see the full review, you can always go back and take a look at the Saturn Pro reviews, but I'm happy to say that it seems as though the build quality keeps getting better and better. And then I do have two pads from Wraith. This is the Blade X and Y. One of them is just a typical hard pad, and the other is a cloth surface on top of what feels as though it is a very mid-level of density. It is a hard surface. There's no give. So if you want that consistency, the Wraith pad is definitely something that can be an option for you. Both of these pads are quite fast. Dynamic movements are on the speedier side. Static movements do have a fair amount of control on the cloth version, and initial friction is fairly low. So if you're looking for kind of the consistency of a hard pad, but you want the cloth surface, the cloth version of the blade is something that could be pretty cool for you. I just worry about the overall build quality, the fact that there are no stitch edges. There's a little bit of fraying with the cloth surface already itself, but it is got this little polycarb on the inside that just feels pretty interesting. It's something that you can definitely play around with, but overall it's kind of just a basic cloth surface on top of that material. But again, it is something that admittedly does provide that consistency because of the hard surface feel underneath. The hard surface version of the pad, if you're somebody who likes hard pads but you just don't like glass, this is a very smooth surface. It does get a little bit sticky at times, but overall, the speed of the pad is pretty damn consistent. It's the same polycarb on the inside as the other pad, so it does make that same noise when you kind of wiggle it around and things like that. It does move around a little bit on my desk with just the basic rubber backing, but overall, the speed is very fast on dynamic. Initial friction is rather low, and static movements are pretty fast as well. So if you want a fast hard pad and you just don't want glass because of that grind that you can have sometimes, or some of that PTFE dust, the pad is definitely something that you could check out. And I'm going to round out this video with two glass pads. The Padsmith Empress, if you like this design, this could be a very good pad for you. It feels really nice. The build quality is exceptional. You guys can see these edges that just look phenomenal. And then the backing here, which is one of my favorite things, it's a full rubber backing, and the Padsmith logo there just looks so cool. It just reminds me of like a cool barber shop that you're going to go to and get a hot shave, maybe a beer at the bar. Just a really cool feeling pad that works exceptionally well if you are into hard pads and you're into glass pads. My favorite skates on the pad, of course, are the ESPTiger Ice V2s. I think that having less surface area on your skates on glass pads helps kind of cut down on the PTFE grind, helps cut down on the unevenness of wear on the PTFE skates. Sometimes you'll see with form-fitted skates different areas of wear on glass pads. This keeps everything rather consistent, and the glide is very good, and you kind of cut down on a lot of the chance of things getting stuck on the skates, and they're just easier to clean. I think the balance of speed, having just 4 dots, is quite a bit better than having the form-fitted skates PTFE on glass. So overall quality of the Padsmith Empress, extremely good. I think if I had to kind of pinpoint where the speed is on this pad for me, I would kind of put it in between the Gamesense Sonar and the Pulsar Superglide. But again, the details and the differences of the speed are so minute that, you know, if you liked this, you would probably like the Gamesense Sonar. If you like this, you'd probably like the Superglide. It's just one of those things where glass pads, there's only so much of a differential now, that it's kind of like fine cutting down very small hairs and being extremely nitpicky. I think the stickiness or feel of this pad is really nice in my humid climate. My skin never really felt stuck to the pad, which I really appreciate. So if you're into the design, what I can say is it's probably one of the best glass pads on the market right now. And finishing it up with the Gamesense Sonar, again, glass pads, you're kind of just being extremely nitpicky in terms of the speed and build quality. What I can say is that the corners aren't quite as nice as something like the Locust, the Atlas, the Superglide, or even the Empress, but it's not really that big of a deal. The corners are still quite nice. The pad has a little bit of a lip and it's a little bit raised. And because the pad just has a few rubber backings on the bottom, because of these rubber backings, there's just a little bit of unevenness with the way the pad sits on my desk. So when I am going from the bottom left of the pad or even in the middle of the pad, just pushing down has a little bit of a wobble on the pad itself. In terms of the overall build quality, there is just a cosmetic imperfection on the top right of the pad where there's like a little hole in the black backing. Be that as it may, the main important thing is how the surface performs, and I think it performs actually quite well. It does have a very smooth feeling, a little bit different to the hand feel of something like the Empress. I think that it does get a little bit stickier than the Empress, but in my opinion, I feel like it has maybe a little bit more control than the Empress, but it could be dependent on the mouse, the shape, the weight of your mouse, the skates. It really is just that close in terms of the speed differentials. In my opinion, I think the Gamesense Sonar has a nice feeling surface. I performed very well with it. If you guys like the appearance and the aesthetic of the pad, and the pad sounds something like that's up your alley in terms of the speed, again, I think it's a little bit more controlled than the Empress. And when you are moving, again, the pad does feel nice, right? It feels like it has maybe a little bit lower dynamic friction than something like a Locust pad from ESPTiger. But overall, it's got this pretty good balanced feel on sweeping movements like dynamic movements. Static friction does feel like it has a little bit of control. And then initial friction, of course, being a glass pad, it's cut down. So all the glass pads are pretty close. I can't say that I dislike any of the new glass pads that I've tried between the Locust pad, the Atlas, the Gamesense Sonar, or the Empress. I think everyone's doing a really nice job, and it's a very competitive market for glass pads. So guys, that is going to be it for this one. I'm going to be putting in a whole lot more time on Pulsar's X2H. I'll be getting in some more content on that, and you guys can see I am currently rocking and maining the Superglide V2s on the X2H. But that's going to be it for this little roundup, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, please leave a sub to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.